Hello. Well, yesterday a subscriber pointed me to a very interesting video by Sargon of Akkad, which I'd managed to miss when it came out a month or so ago, and it was all about Starship Troopers. And it prompted me to think about how that book works and the system it pretends to explore. And I'm saying pretends because Heinlein wasn't really thinking things through. I remember when I first read it, I was very upset when there was a reference to someone tying his shoelace. It just occurred to me, there he is. This story is supposed to be, 700 years into the future, and they're still using shoelaces. He's not really talking about 700 years in the future, is he? That's what brought me up short, and I had to absorb that for a while. Finally, I got on with reading the rest, but I knew this wasn't going to be about what I thought it was about. Of course, the novel was a working through of Heinlein's political philosophy in the same way, as has often been remarked, as Atlas Shrugged was a work through of Ayn Rand's political philosophy. I think it's very significant that two very different writers wrote about the same thing at about the same time. That is, they both were worried about the pernicious dangers of the democratic system, which both of them seemed to think were falling apart. And they came up with two equally unworkable solutions. Now, about 35 minutes in, Sargon says, "What is fascism?" Verhoeven thought he'd made a film about fascism and attempted to create a satirical look at a futuristic fascist society. The problem with Verhoeven's representation is that it doesn't actually contain any fascism. As Jordan Peterson might say, that depends on how you define fascism. For sure, as Sargon says, there appears to be private property and free citizens and even vocal criticism. But that wouldn't have happened if that system had really been there. And we have to look at what else is going on. And we can start with that bundle of sticks called the fasci, which the Romans used as a symbol of unity. You have all these thin sticks. Individually, each one can be just broken very easily. But when they're tied together in a bundle, it's impossible even to bend them. That's the whole philosophy of fascism. That's the ideal to which fascism aspires. And that turns up both in the book and in the film. And what it means is that the individual is important only in as much as he conforms to the shape and cohesion of the group. The soldiers in Starship Troopers are fascist, not because they're soldiers, but because as soldiers, they also have the sole right to make the laws, and they see that as perfectly reasonable. The society Heinlein has created, which is obviously modelled on some sort of Spartan template, appears to be fair and equitable. It's reasonable on the face of it that the people who are defending their world should be the ones to rule it. But that's the way, classical Muslim society worked and works even today in many cases. And, that's not turned out too well, has it? You see, there are two problems here. First of all, when you have a group with no voting rights, then you're going to get a group that's exploited. For sure. It might not happen straight away, but it will happen, and it will get worse and worse. So you're going to have an underclass that is a constant terror. And you're not going to be fighting bugs, you're going to be fighting your own peasants. In real life, Juan Rico wouldn't be standing in a smart sitting room in Buenos Aires with his parents pouring wine and talking about taking outer space holidays. They would have been in a barrio somewhere celebrating their son's acceptance into a military unit with a grand feast of roast rat, probably, and something else. As the rulers of this particular universe get more and more accustomed to their power, they would start to use the trooper system to eliminate enemies. I'm not talking about using the troopers as assassins, although that might happen as well. I'm talking about putting the members of rival families, for instance, into fighting units, you know, the ones that are the most certain to get killed. So yes, like Atlas Shrugged, Starship Troopers is as unworkable as is a shoelace in a uniform worn by an astronaut soldier. So it's just a story, and why am I spending all this time over it as if it were a serious argument? Because unfortunately, that's how a lot of people are seeing the world now. That is, there are some people fit to rule and some people who are not considered to be fit to rule. We have people running our financial sectors and our communications networks who believe that service in their corporations entitles them to rule the civilians, who don't really know what's what and who haven't earned the right to voice their own opinions. Even worse, some of us are actually worse than that. We're the bugs who must be eliminated at all cost. Only at this less developed and technological stage of society, it's banks, not tanks, that they hit us with. Thanks for listening. Please like and subscribe. And if you wish to donate, it's through PayPal at graniopteryx@gmail.com. Till next time.